February 7th, 1983, 3:30 p.m. Mary Gillespie was driving her daily bus route, alive, seen, doing her job. Minutes later, she was staring directly into the barrel of a loaded revolver, but there was no one holding the gun. No shooter in the bushes, just a box tied to a fence post, rigged with twine and pulleys designed to execute her the moment she touched a sign. That is the level of hatred investigators were dealing with. Because Mary Gillespie wasn't just the target of a random attack, she was the center of a 7-year psychological siege. A siege conducted by a writer who didn't just threaten a town, but dismantled it. The Circleville writer didn't just disappear. They watched, and they vanished in a way that defies basic logic. Circleville, Ohio, 1976. A disciplined community where privacy was assumed. But beneath the surface, someone was keeping a ledger. For nearly 2 decades, this town was terrorized by a letter writer, someone who knew every secret, every affair, and every hidden sin. Thousands of letters, a mysterious car crash, and a booby trap designed to kill. The police investigation would eventually zero in on one man. They would lock him in solitary confinement. But there's a problem. The letters didn't stop. Today, we are examining the Circleville letters, a case where the timeline fractures and the silence feels intentional. Section 1. The First Salvo. The timeline begins in 1976. There was no warning. Mary Gillespie, a local school bus driver, opened her mailbox to find a letter. No return address. Block print. Immediate violence. The writer accused Mary of having an affair with the school superintendent. "I know where you live," the letter read. "I've been observing your house, and I know you have children. This is no joke." Days later, another letter arrived. Then another. The writer wasn't guessing. They knew Mary's schedule. They knew the layout of her house. This wasn't a prank. It was a surveillance log. By mid-1977, the target expanded to her husband, Ron Gillespie. The writer explicitly told Ron that if he didn't do something about his wife's affair, his life would be forfeited. The Gillespies were living in a glass house, and someone was throwing stones from the dark. Section 2. The timeline collapses August 17th, 1977. The threat level escalated. Ron Gillespie received a phone call. He was described as calm, but after hanging up, he was enraged. He grabbed his .22 caliber pistol, got into his red pickup, and drove into the night to confront the writer. At 10:30 p.m., Ron Gillespie was dead. His truck had slammed into a tree. The official ruling was an accident due to intoxication. But here is where the timeline fractures. Police found Ron's gun. It had been fired once, a fired round. But there was no target, no bullet hole in the truck, no bullet hole in the tree, no witness to explain what Ron Gillespie shot at or who shot at him. People don't drive to confront a stalker and crash into a tree unless something interrupts the timeline. But with Ron dead, the letters didn't stop. They accelerated. Section 3. The trap. Fast forward to that day in 1983. Mary Gillespie stops her bus to tear down an obscene sign. Behind it is the booby-trapped box with the loaded gun. This changed everything. This was attempted murder. And this time, the writer made a mistake. Investigators traced the gun to Paul Freshour, Ron Gillespie's brother-in-law. The evidence seemed overwhelming. Paul had the gun. Experts claimed his handwriting matched the letters. Paul was arrested, convicted of attempted murder, and sentenced to 7 to 25 years. Case closed. The writer was in a cage. The town could finally sleep. Section 4. The impossible letters. Paul Freshour was placed in solitary confinement. His mail was monitored. He was not allowed pens or paper. And yet, the letters continued, hundreds of them, written in the same block print, containing the same intimate knowledge of the town's private lives. They were postmarked from Columbus, Ohio, appearing in mailboxes while Paul was under 24-hour lockdown. The warden himself received a letter telling him things about his own life an inmate could not possibly know. So, investigators were left with two uncomfortable possibilities. Either Paul Freshour was a mastermind smuggling hundreds of letters out of solitary, or he was innocent, and the real writer was still out there. We are left with a case where the evidence contradicts itself. A dead husband with a fired gun, a booby trap linked to a man in solitary. So, which theory do you believe? Did Paul Freshour orchestrate a decade of terror from a prison cell? Or did the real writer watch Paul go to prison, laugh, and drop another letter in the mailbox? Tell me in the comments. And if you want more cases where the timeline collapses and the silence feels intentional, subscribe. Because the next story doesn't just raise questions, it erases answers.